think, in my experience and seeing what makes really the people great photographers or great artists. Actually, it can be in anything, right? Especially in the creative world. And what the difference is between those people and the people who are stuck and can't really progress and don't really move forward in those types of things is humility. It's exactly what you're talking about. The ability to take constructive criticism. Obviously, if someone comes and goes, yeah, that's shit, do it again. It's a bit different. But for someone who's been there, done it, the ability to absorb constructive criticism and be willing to learn from it is such a key virtue to have in order to be a good artist. I totally believe in that.
That the person giving that advice is doing it with the right intentions, with your progress is being their priority. I remember very, very early on when I started out on the photography side of it, I went to a show in Birmingham, in the UK, and it was the forget what it's called, Focus, I think it was called back then, Focus on Imaging. And it was before it became the photography show. And I remember walking around, a newbie, completely kind of new to all this kind of stuff. And there was a stand there, and there's a Royal Photographic Society stand, an elevated stand. I remember walking around, there was all these images that were almost like being exhibited. And I saw these two guys. There was this one guy who was clearly having a portfolio review on that stand, but people could walk around him while he was having this review. And as I got near him, I remember I just never forget it. The guy who was giving him the review had his book, and he's saying to him, I just don't get it. What are you trying to tell me here? What is this all about? I mean, what is that? I was like, Jesus. I mean, that there was, I was very surprised if that guy continued to be a photographer after that. He completely kicked the life out of him. There was no good, bad, good. It was bad, bad, bad. You know, it's like, blimey hell, that's brutal. So maybe in the back of my mind when I do stuff as well, so seeing stuff like that has influenced how I am or have became when I was speaking to people. I thought that there's no way I'd ever want anybody to feel like that if they were speaking to me. Jeez, awful.
Do you find it's also quite difficult? I think about this all the time because some people say to me, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, art is subjective. And then, my kind of more rational side goes, well, there's still a difference between good and bad. As an educator and someone who does these types of reviews and has students and stuff, do you find that's quite a difficult line as well? Like, okay, this is just someone's style maybe compared to, well, this is technically not so great.
Yeah, it's it's a difficult one. That I can give an example of that in a way. I've got a friend of mine. I won't name him, but he has got a very specific style in a certain genre of photography, and it's based around compositing. He does hours upon hours of work on these composites. Now, if anybody who was in, people I know who do a lot of compositing work, if they looked at it, they might go, "Those shadows are well off." Do you mean they don't look real at all? It looks like they're floating, and he's clearly just put a bit of black brush mark underneath their feet, and the perspective's wrong and stuff like that. Now, if you looked at it, you'd go, "Ooh." But this person's been doing this for a long while, and I know that particular look is their style. They are more than capable of doing it so that it is more realistic, but that's not the look they're going for. Now, that's him. Whereas there are other people that are doing sort of stuff and they kind of live in this, again, going back to the bodybuilding thing, they've been told they look amazing by the wrong people. Do you know what I mean? Whereas you got somebody here who's convinced, no, I'm really good at this and that looks brilliant. I don't care what you say. My mom said it looked great. It's like, yeah, but maybe you should look on this. And I think that's where it gets difficult because you want to kind of help people say, look, maybe you should work on that, but they're not having it. It's humility. Again, it's humility. I always knew maybe it's just my personality. And maybe that's why I did love the bodybuilding thing, because when you do the bodybuilding, you've got to have a long-term vision. It's not an overnight success, regardless of what people think. You don't go and pop a few pills and then the next morning you wake up looking like Lou Ferrigno. It's not the way. You've got to have a long-term vision. It's the same with this world. I've always wanted to be in the creative world for the long term, the longevity of it. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's It's difficult. It's difficult, but I just love it. I lost my track then for a second. Mentioned mentioned Lou Ferrigno, and I just went, oh, my mind's gone. But yeah, I always wanted to be in for the long term, and I was always willing to learn and progress. And I knew that where I always wanted to. Uh, Actually, that's what I was going to say. Is I've always had the mentality of you're only as good as the last job. I'm not one of these people. Oh, I could have been in the Beatles. Do you know what I mean? It's like no. I've my last job, my last image that I shared is where I'm at. So I've got to get better. I've got to get better. I've always had that. Whereas I think you can see a lot of people they'll rest too much. They rely too much on previous successes. But previous successes eventually they become history. What are you doing now? What's your latest thing now? So you look at somebody's portfolio. When did they last update their portfolio with a new image that they did? You know what I mean? It's 12 months in the year flies by. Is it unrealistic to maybe have one new image a month? And if not, maybe 10 in a year, 10 in a year to update your portfolio. Don't ride too much on previous success.